makes it clear that the president's job is to faithfully execute the laws. And in my view, the president has not faithfully executed the laws. We have a system of government outlined in our Constitution with the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. Congress has its job to do, and so does the president. And when there's conflicts like this between the legislative branch and the administrative branch, it's, in my view, our responsibility to stand up for this institution in which we serve.
Middle-class families can't wait for Republicans in Congress to do stuff. So sue me.
The lawsuit threatened by Speaker of the House John Boehner is the stuff pundits and commentators crave, filled to the brim with so many juicy avenues for discussion and discourse, and more than a little humor along the way. Then again, we also have a president who seems bent on cutting his own greatest comedy hits in order to deflect criticism from every corner. In this corner, welcome into MidPoint, former lawyer, which we will not hold against him, turned political comedian and commentator, also co-director of the comedy documentary The Muslims Are Coming. Dean Obeidallah is in the house. Dean, thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me on, Ed. I appreciate it.
Dean, I tell you, when I see the lawsuit and the first thing that I bring up when it comes out to the latest news on John Boehner, the word I see are nutty. Nutty lawsuit. I mean, isn't it fair to say that pretty much, while maybe the impact at first was interesting and caught everybody, that at this point, more people are laughing than really paying attention seriously to this lawsuit?
It's interesting you frame it that way, because to me the lawsuit is just a political tool. That's all it is. And even Eric Erickson, who I don't generally agree with, to be honest with you, called it political theater and a waste of taxpayer dollars. I think John Boehner, in his op-ed for CNN, was candid. He said he's frustrated, and he said the president is frustrated. I think they're both frustrated with gridlock. And John Boehner has to deal with certain more conservative elements in his coalition in the House. And maybe this was a way to give them something to say, like, I'm doing something. But in reality, we know, even if you file this lawsuit, nothing's going to happen as a practical matter. I don't understand. Until we see the complaint, we don't know. But until you see the complaint, it makes no sense to me. Boehner's talking about, I want the president to do his job on issues.
But isn't it just that where you say doing something? Need to do something here, because the attack has always been from the president and from the Democrats that the Republicans don't do anything. You don't give us anything of substance here. So I even see Republicans themselves who are starting to distance themselves from John Boehner and say, this is just not a good idea, because all you're really doing here is treading water.
Well, it's true. It was hard to hear for a second. I heard an overlap of talk going on within the studio. But I heard you say that he's treading water, the president, from approval ratings. You're absolutely right. I think the President Obama's in a tough position. He's on the verge of being a lame duck, I think objectively, not subjectively anymore, objectively. You know, they already had the 2016 campaign heating up after these midterm elections. Presidents are traditionally seen as having very little influence on public policy. And that's part of the reasoning. I think Obama wants to do something before it's basically over. There's no legacy left on President Obama.
I think what you're getting too is you're getting some feedback on your computer as well, because I can hear it coming back, so just be careful of that. I think that's some of the audio that you're hearing there. There's also a little bit of a discussion here about people in Washington saying what they really can't wait for is for the president to file a countersuit against John Boehner. So this is where I guess the comedy might come in here. Are we not looking at the possibility of where there's a lawsuit and then a countersuit and then another suit and then another suit? Hey, come on, you're a former lawyer. Face it, Dean. We're just giving you guys more money and more chance to make a buck, right?
You're absolutely right. Who's going to pay for all the lawsuits? Countersuit for things like the House leader calling for 50 votes to repeal Obamacare, which was just symbolic politics. But according to CBS News, that cost us $15 million in taxpayer dollars. Now, that would rile the Democratic base, but to be honest, that lawsuit would be frivolous. Just as John Boehner's lawsuit is being potentially.
Isn't it in some way interesting that it would seem that this lawsuit may, and again, this may be funny to some people, it may actually help the Democrats make their point about the Republicans?
Well, Ed, I'm sorry, you're going to have to repeat that, because there was, I don't know if it's the
Quite all right. Quite all right. We've got a little audio feedback here. It seems like, to some people at least, this is giving the Democrats more fuel against the Republicans in many ways.
No, you're right. And when John Boehner, and just so people know this, and I know your viewership is a little conservative leaning, When John Boehner first announced it a few weeks ago, the potential of a lawsuit, the Democratic Campaign Committee, the DNC, and the DCCC, Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, were touted. And a couple of days after that, than they had raised in weeks and weeks before. It is something odd that can motivate the Democratic base. Just like the Hobby Lobby decision, might actually vote in the midterm elections. And people forget, midterm elections, 2006, 2010, turnout was about 30 to 40%. That's it. So a little bump up in the midterm elections of turnout of passionate voters can change the outcome. I don't think it could ever take the House back in this cycle for the Democrats, but it could be enough for Democrats to keep control of the Senate, even by just 1 or 2 seats.
Dean, let's turn to real comedy now, if you will, because certainly this is just sort of like the fringe, I guess. But maybe the funniest thing going on, at least to some people, let me be fair. I want to stop and say to some people, this is funny. To some people, this is deadly serious. Lois Lerner. Now we find out that Lois Lerner had actually kicked out emails and saying, wait a minute, people may be reading our emails here. This just seems to get worse and worse to many people, where there are now individuals going, was she not aware that sometimes the dog doesn't eat all the homework here?
Right. Ed, can I just commend you for being fair? I'm not kidding. It's very nice. Because even the way you're framing this is pretty fair. I think Lois Lerner, even as someone who's progressive like myself, when you see the emails are missing, and now you see this new email and indications that she warned people, hey, they might be looking at our emails, it raises flags for everyone. I think the timing, if you look at the real timing, Michael Tomasky, my colleague at the Daily Beast, wrote a great article showing the timing that when the emails, when she first reported her emails being missing, this story had not even broken. The Inspector General's report hadn't come out yet, so she would not even have known about it. In any event, just the smell test for the average person tells us something is just not right, and it could be all coincidence, but I think the burden is shifted to her to prove to mainstream independent voters, frankly, that something awry didn't happen here, something more malicious in covering up for what could have been her perceived understanding that maybe she did something wrong.
I'll even be more fair here. Is it getting to a point where it doesn't make a difference whether you're Republican, Libertarian, Democrat, that the smell test is becoming pretty odoriferous these days across America?
It is. On this issue, when you see the new thing where she's warning people, and what she said, frankly, is watch what you're going to put in your emails. When I used to be a lawyer, we would tell our corporate clients that all the time. We didn't put it in emails to tell them that because we don't want a paper trail of us telling them that. But in reality, you're going to warn your clients that, and anyone listening, you're in the corporate world, know this. Your emails, even when you delete them, can be discovered and can be used in litigation against you in civil lawsuits or criminal lawsuits. So whatever you put in writing, you do not want it to be something that can be construed against you. And for her to put that in writing, what time is going on, I guess was the quickest way to get the word out. And let's use instant messaging as opposed, or texting as opposed to email, so there's no paper trail. Again, makes you sense like maybe she was, I'm not using the term cover up, but there was something she was aware of, that investigations are pending, and we better be worried about what they can find out.
Dean, come on, it's got to be amazing to you that still so many people don't realize it. When you write it, when you put it, whether it's a cell phone, the internet, your computer, it never goes away. It lives forever. This is the 21st century, for crying out loud.
And the same thing with social media. You have people tweet things outside of their workplace and wonder why they get fired at the workplace because of something they didn't say at work. But in the world, everything goes out there. You put something in writing, I don't care if it's a tweet, it's a Facebook post, it's an email, it's a text. It can come back and bite you. So think before you press send or before you press tweet, because it could save your job or your career, to be honest with you.
Dean, a couple of minutes I have left. I have a lot of comedian friends, and they've always told me the same thing. Ed, don't try to be a comedian. I don't try to be a news anchor. You don't get up here. Don't try to do what I do for a living, because you just can't make it work. Which then brings us to the president, who now seems to be really good, according to some people, as far as his humor is concerned. Other people, I think, would tell the president, Mr. President, please, lead the nation, but stay off the comedy. It's not what you do for a living.
Actually, I wrote an article last week about, and before the White House Correspondents' Dinner, because I did live coverage for a network that you guys probably don't like, MSNBC, about the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And President Obama has changed the way presidents choose humor. And I say that objectively, you might not like it, but in the past, overwhelmingly, presidents would use humor making fun of themselves, so self-deprecating, or they would make fun of their adversaries. Like Ronald Reagan was great at telling these folksy stories and made fun of Democrats, but generally it was attack across the Democratic Party. Obama's changed it. He does use comedy like Jon Stewart, like The Daily Show. It's biting, it's very pointed at specific people by name, which is different. It's not just Republicans in the House. He'll do jokes. He had done jokes about Eric Cantor and John Boehner by name in the past, about Sheldon Adelson by name. that were mocking and had a point of view. So some people are not going to like it. I get it. It's different. And I think, honestly, the next president who comes in is probably going to use humor similar, maybe not as edgy. But President Obama was the first president elected who grew up watching The Daily Show. You know, Jon Stewart came in 1999. So Obama, in those years running for office, saw The Daily Show, and his writers, himself and his writers who were younger, grew up watching The Daily Show. It's had an impact on his use of humor. And I know Wall Street Journal wrote an article this week mentioning my article, saying they don't like his use of humor, the way they use it. It was sort of tongue-in-cheek article. But he's changed it, and it's never going to go back. I honestly do not think it'll ever go back.
All right, so 15 seconds left, then I have to ask you, would you have him as an opening act?
Well, I don't think, no, the President of the United States, no, I'd open for him. Are you kidding me? I have a band open for me. Maybe somebody unknown who's not that great, so I look better. And then Obama goes after that. I can't follow the President of the United States. I don't care if it was Bush or Obama or in the future, whoever it might be. Too hard to follow.
We'll make sure. Don't worry about it, Dean. We're going to put you up there as a headliner. We'll get the president to open for you one day. That would be, I'll pay for that one. Dean, always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks so much for joining us.
Take care.
All right, Dean Obeidallah joining us here. Yeah, I'll have him as the opening act instead. Coming up next, and also coming up here on MidPoint, the word Obamacare striking fear and loathing in the hearts and wallets of many Americans. Prepare yourself for what very well could be Obamacare for the web. That's all coming up right here on MidPoint as we question everything.